We're on to Oklahoma. How does Texas fix its offense for the biggest game of the season? I've got an idea. Let's dive in on Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We've got some sound from Steve Sarkisian talking about how to fix the offensive line and also the latest injury updates for the Longhorns just 3 days away from Red River. But first, let's try to come up with some solutions for this Texas offense that, outside of the Sam Houston game and a 5-minute stretch against San Jose State, just has not been fun to watch so far this season. And Saturday against Florida was really rough. We don't need to go through all of the numbers again, but it's safe to say the Texas offense was downright horrible in the swamp. So how can it be fixed in 7 days' time from last Saturday to this Saturday? Coaches are problem solvers. The best coaches in the sport are the ones who can solve problems the fastest. How does Steve Sarkisian and the rest of the offensive staff solve these offensive problems? For starters, I think Texas needs to make life easier on itself. Here's what I mean. Against Florida, Arch Manning's average depth of target on his passing attempts, 20.4 yards down the field. 20.4. That is the highest single game average distance of target for any quarterback in college football for the entire 2025 season. Not the highest for Arch, not the highest in the SEC, the highest for any quarterback in college football this season. Arch Manning, 20.4 yards average depth of target on his passing attempts this past Saturday. That was the first average distance target north of 20 yards this season in the entire country. It's actually the first since week 14 of the 2024 season. That is not a recipe for success. You can't be relying on deep shots down the field against good defenses in this conference. Now, of course, some of that was because the Longhorns were down a few scores in the fourth quarter and they were trying to play catch up. And you'll typically chunk the ball a little bit more when you're desperate to get back into a football game. But still, the highest distance of target of any quarterback this season, not good. Especially not good when you're playing behind an offensive line that can't block long enough for you to really get the ball down the field. Steve Sarkisian was asked about this during his Monday press conference. He was asked kind of a two-part question. Number one, where has the quick passing game been? And number two, can you start to implement it a little bit more this weekend against the Sooners? Here's what the head coach had to say.
Yeah, I think to Arch's defense, he can only do what's called, right? And so I definitely would not put that on him. You know, I think we went into that game with a mindset of we wanted to attack them vertically down the field. We felt like that was where they were susceptible, and clearly they were. We hit a couple, we didn't hit some. You know, we missed a couple. And every game's different in the approach of how we try to attack people. We had some opportunities for some more rhythmic, quicker throws. It didn't come to fruition the way we would have liked. But again, every week, every game's got its own formula for success for us of how we're going to try to attack an opponent. And the flow of the game, to your point, then dictates kind of where you start leaning into and where you start going. I thought Florida, to their credit, Ron Roberts is a great coach. You know, they did a good job of understanding that was where we probably needed to go, and then tried to take that away from us and made that aspect of our game difficult and forced us to kind of hold the ball a little bit more. So credit to them on that, but we've got to be more creative to find ways to get some of those more easy completions.
Steve Sarkisian on Monday. Yeah, they've got to be more creative to find ways to get some of those easy completions. Going back to the start of that answer, you heard Steve Sarkisian absolve Arch Manning of all blame here, and there's no surprise, right? Sark rarely blames his players, and he stood up for Arch a ton, both in the post-game press conference on Saturday night and in Monday's presser as well. But Arch is a part of this problem. A part, not all. I don't think Arch is anticipating well enough right now. Like his best plays on Saturday, and I think his best plays this season happen when the play starts to break down. He scrambles, he extends plays, and then he's able to find somebody open down the field. Those plays are great, right? Like some of the most exciting plays a quarterback can make are those exact scenarios. Look at Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Like those guys have made a living off of those type of highlight reel plays. Now, I'm not trying to compare Arch Manning to either of those guys. Those are two of the best of the NFL right now. But I'm using those guys as examples because I know y'all have seen those guys play quarterback. Those plays are exciting. They are great. They can be difference makers for your offense, but you can't live off of those, right? Allen and Mahomes are great in the pocket. They're great in the flow of the offense too, in addition to those spectacular plays that they can make when they're starting to scramble. Right now, Arch Manning looks too often like an athlete playing quarterback instead of a quarterback playing quarterback. He needs more flow and consistency within the actual offense. Hitting your first read, dropping back quickly, hitting your target as soon as you're at the top of the drop back, throwing it to a receiver before he even turns around expecting the football. I think the touchdown pass to Trey Wisner is a prime example of this. Like that was open right away. And Arch Manning just waited a couple of extra seconds, still able to hit Trey Wisner, but gave the defense a lot of time to make that play a lot harder than it needed to be. Need more flow, need more consistency. Of course, a lot of this is play calling. A lot of this is horrendous offensive line play. And maybe part of Arch Manning's struggles are him not trusting his offensive line right now. And I think his internal clock is a little bit sped up because of how bad the O-line is. Like, who could blame Arch? The offensive line was horrible on Saturday, and they've been bad more often than not this season. So I get that he maybe is having a difficult time trusting the other 10 guys around him because they're letting him down a little bit too much right now. But for this offense to get where it needs to get, I think that has to get better. Of Arch Manning's 29 passing attempts against Florida, 13 of them were throws more than 20 yards down the field. That's 43.3%. That is a completely unsustainable level of success, regardless of quarterback in the SEC. Arch Manning, think about screen Sarkisian. Like he loves screen passes. He loves short passes. A huge staple of this offense have been throws behind the line of scrimmage. Just 2 passing attempts behind the line of scrimmage against Florida. That's 7.8%. Manning for the season has seen 20% of his passing attempts targeted at or behind the line of scrimmage. That is by far the lowest number of any quarterback in Sark's tenure at Texas. So way too many shots down the field, not enough easy throws. It didn't work against Florida. It sure as hell isn't going to work against this Oklahoma defense that we're going to see on Saturday. That is first in the country in sacks per game and TFLs per game on defense. Shows you that, they've got a damn good defensive line that has been wreaking havoc on their opposition all year long. You cannot let those guys just live in your backfield on Saturday, or else it's going to be a long day for the Longhorns and for Longhorn fans making the trip to Dallas. You can't go broke taking a profit. You have to take what the defense gives you. You don't need a bunch of shots down the field. You've got to call shorter and quicker pass plays to get the ball out of Arch Manning's hands quickly. You need evidence that that's going to work. Look at what Florida did against Texas. DJ Lagway, on average, got the ball out of his hands in 2.33 seconds on his dropbacks. That was the 4th fastest time of any quarterback in college football this past weekend, and it worked. Lagway had his best game of the season, and Florida was able to totally negate the Texas pass rush. Florida's offensive line hadn't been playing very well before Saturday. They gave up no sacks in large part because they made a conscious effort to get the ball out of their quarterback's hands quickly. That's what Texas needs to do. You have to do whatever you can to negate the impact this Oklahoma defensive line is going to have in this game. You have to do whatever you can to help out your offensive line and your quarterback right now. quick hitting, spread passing. That could also, potentially serve as a replacement to your run game. That's obviously non-existent right now. And if you're able to hit those, then that opens the door for some deep shots. So this is a bit of a challenge for Steve Sarkisian. He loves double moves. He loves longer developing plays and routes for outside receivers. But this offensive line, and even when Texas goes in max protect and they leave a tight end or two to try to pass block, they're just not good enough to execute this offensively right now, especially against this Oklahoma defense. Chicks dig the long ball. I love the long ball. To hell with that. If you can hit a few, that's great. But you can't rely on that being your offense. You tried that against Florida. It didn't work. It's why your offense was struggling, and it's not going to work at the Cotton Bowl either. So get the ball out of Arch Manning's hands quickly, shorter plays, quicker plays, negate the OU pass rush. That is a huge key. Those may be keys plural for this Texas offense getting things in gear at the Cotton Bowl on Saturday at 2:30. What say you? Do you agree with my game plan? Do you disagree with my game plan? What would you like to see Texas do on Saturday besides, score points and move the ball down the field? Those things would be nice. Just find a way to do that, please. Solve that problem, Coach. That would be great. All right. Speaking of the offensive line, Steve Sarkisian was asked a number of questions about the Texas O-line and how he plans on fixing it. We will let you hear from the head coach himself coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. They've got more IIHS top safety picks than anybody else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all of the details, and Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the Napa leather upholstery to the metallic accents. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, because they've got smooth handling and intuitive controls in all of their vehicles. Plus, all-wheel drive is standard in every crossover SUV, so you're going to be able to drive with confidence through almost any season. Confidence and style, you get them both with Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It's Mazda. Move and be moved. And also a shout out to our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even tell you what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table, and that's the worst thing you can do. That's why Monarch Money exists. This is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface right there on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you, because they do the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel like you are in control of your money. The best part, you don't ever have to touch a spreadsheet. Maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, do all of the things to give you a clear and better vision of your financial picture. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get half off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com. That's the website. LOCKEDONCollege. That's the code for 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. We got 3 bits of sound and video from Steve Sarkisian's Monday press conference. All of these are in regards to the offensive line. So we'll play these cuts, and I'll give some of my thoughts on what the Longhorns can do to make that unit play at least a little better in Red River. The very first question that Coach Sark was asked in his Monday press conference was about the offensive line. Chip Brown asked the question. We actually are going to leave the question in this cut. And Chip asked Sark about, are you going to make any more changes up front for the Oklahoma game? Maybe the shortest answer we've ever gotten from Steve Sarkisian during one of his press conferences. Check it out.
Steve, the offensive line, obviously it was a struggle. Do you make any other changes on the line personnel-wise this week? And, what else can be done, I guess?
Got to play better. Got to coach better. Got to play better.
That was it. Got to play better, got to coach better, got to play better. It's about a 2.5-second answer from Steve Sarkisian when he was asked about, you going to make any changes? What can you do? What do you need to see? We got to play better, got to coach better, got to play better. He's not wrong. I wouldn't have hated a little more detail and more elaboration there from the head coach. Hey, how do you plan on playing better? How do you plan on coaching better? What can y'all do in 7 days to get this figured out? But look, Sark being direct, being honest, telling the truth, he's just not wrong. They've got to play better. They've got to coach these guys up better. The very next question, we also left the question in this one as well. Steve Sarkisian was asked about Texas not getting an offensive lineman from the transfer portal this past offseason.
Steve, with the information that you have now, do you think you and your staff made the right decision not to pursue an offensive lineman in the portal this offseason?
I think inevitably you can play the hypothetical and the what ifs. It's what's available and then what do you have. And, I think our guys that we have are more than capable. Like I said, we got to coach better and we got to play better.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. Yeah, they made a mistake. And yeah, I'm sure if you gave Sark some truth serum, he would say that he wishes that they had gone after an offensive lineman or two or maybe even three in the transfer portal this past offseason. But they didn't. They made their bed. They've got to lie in it. You've got to work with what you've got. There's no in-season transfer portal or trade deadline or anything like that. So, again, Sark at the end of that said they've got to play better. They've got to coach better. They have to figure it out. But a lot of teams, including this team that Texas will see on Saturday, including Ohio State, including Oregon, some of the top teams in the country right now, they went out and brought in offensive linemen from the portal. And, well, their offensive lines are a hell of a lot better than Texas's right now. So, yeah, that was a mistake, but this is what you got to deal with the rest of the season. Last but not least, just the answer on this one. Of course, one of the big storylines from the Florida game, Steve Sarkisian and company benched Connor Stroh at left guard at halftime, and they went with Nick Brooks in the second half of that one. Here's Sark talking about that decision.
Yeah, so, obviously practice determines a lot of who plays. Who do we feel is ready to perform? And then the flow of the game. I didn't think Nick Brooks was going to go out there and play a perfect game. It's the first time he's ever played in a real game at left guard. But I think there's traits in there and there's ability in there and the growth and practice in there that I think he's got a very bright future for us. There was going to be growing pains, and we obviously lived through some of those Saturday. But I do think he's got a bright future.
Yeah, Nick Brooks may have a bright future, but he was horrible on Saturday. And we'll get to some of the stats and numbers, not to beat a dead horse too much. But we're doing this because I'm here to tell you all that Nick Brooks cannot see the field against Oklahoma this weekend. So the question is, right, what can Texas try? What can they do to get this offensive line turned around? Because the Florida game wasn't the first game they looked bad. Like, they were getting pushed around by San Jose State and UTEP, and maybe that should have been the tell that this group just wasn't very good this season. And they had some good box score numbers against Ohio State. I thought they played okay, all things considered, against Ohio State, but some of the problems that showed up there have continued to show up and really have gotten worse in the last 4 games that the Longhorns have played. So what can they do? What combination of offensive linemen gives Texas the best chance to win? I asked myself that question. I'm going to ask y'all the question. Comment below if you're watching on YouTube. The truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. And more importantly, I don't think Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood know the answer to that question right now. I think there are 2 guys who have to start on the offensive line. It's Trevor Goosby at left tackle, DJ Campbell at right guard. Those are your best 2 players. Those guys, Goosby played horrible against Florida, but he's been your best offensive lineman all year. Campbell's not perfect, but he's by far and away your best option, and I thought he was the best offensive lineman against Florida this past Saturday. Here's what I would try. I would move Cole Hudson from center to left guard. I would put Connor Robertson at center, and I would leave Brandon Baker at right tackle. Cole Hudson had a horrible game at center against Florida. We were hoping the move from guard to center would work for him, and it just hasn't this year. I don't think he's an elite left guard, but I do think he's better at guard than he is at center. And with the play that you got from the 2 guys who did suit up at left guard against Florida, Hudson's a better option than that. Connor Robertson, you put him in at center. He actually came in and played a significant amount in the OU game a couple of years ago, one that Texas lost. He's average at best, but again, I don't think Connor Stroh is a power 4 player right now. Nick Brooks just had a 0.0 pass blocking grade against Florida. Nick Brooks has played 44 snaps this year. He leads Texas in pressures allowed. That is incredibly bad. He should have been pulled against the Gators. Like, I have no clue why he wasn't. Unfair to him, unfair to Arch Manning, unfair to everybody on the offense. Coaching malpractice for Nick Brooks to stay out there. I don't care if he went with Connor Stroh. I don't know where Neto Umeozulu is. We thought he was going to be the starter at left guard going into the year. Then all of a sudden we hear that Connor Stroh's been better at practice going into the Ohio State game. Stroh gets the start. Neto played a little bit in week 1. We haven't really seen him since. I don't know if you should expect him to play at this point, but how is he worse than what Nick Brooks did? You can't play Connor Stroh. You can't play Nick Brooks. That's why I would go with the 5 that I just mentioned. Nate Kibble's there. I don't think we see him. I don't think we see Daniel Cruz. You're not going to baptize those guys, if you will, in this game. And then Brandon Baker at right tackle. He hasn't been very good. 7 penalties to lead all offensive linemen on this Longhorn team. But you could tell he's got something. He's got good feet. He's got good athleticism. He's not nearly as strong as he should be. If he could stop the penalties, though, especially the pre-snap stuff, he'll be fine. I think he's probably your best option at right tackle. Like, Jaden Chapman's only played 10 snaps. I can't understand. I said this at the time. I'm saying it again. Texas should have explored other options in those 3 cupcake non-conference games. They didn't. They were so hell-bent on getting their starting 5 to play well that they left all of those guys out there. They still didn't play well. It's like, no, you should have been using those games to figure out your best combination of 5. They don't know what their best combination of 5 is. I don't either. So proactive, they should have been proactive. I would not use the word proactive to talk about how this coaching staff has managed this offensive line unit this year. Those are the 5 I would try. But again, there's no guarantee that it would work. I haven't seen it not work yet. So that's the bunch that gives me the most faith, I guess. They have to play better. They have to play better if the Longhorns are going to win. Plain and simple. Texas can't get whipped in the trenches for the 2nd consecutive Saturday. All right, some positive news to wrap up a Wednesday show. The latest injury updates for the Longhorns just 3 days away from Texas OU. Some good news coming next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to your football watching every single week. You just pick more or less on player projections. If you think Josh Allen's going to ball out, you pick more on his passing yards. If you think Saquon Barkley's going to play well, if he plays tomorrow, boom, you could bet on him rushing for a touchdown. Just like that, you're in the game. It's so quick. You could set your lineup in under a minute. They have so many ways to win. You can also follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. So you don't even have to make the decisions yourself. You can copy your friends and you are good to go. Download the Prize Picks apps today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Just that easy. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, final segment, Wednesday edition. Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Some notable Longhorns missed some or all of the Florida game. Manny Muhammad, of course, did not play. C.J. Baxter did not play. Parker Livingston left the game early. Trey Wisner looked like he got banged up on his rushing touchdown in the 4th quarter. Those are some important pieces. Your number 1 corner, your 2 top running backs, the guy who's been your best wide receiver so far this year. It goes without saying you'd like to have all of those guys available for this one, going up against what has been the best defense in the SEC, maybe the best defense in America. You would have felt that way before the Florida game, but like we saw how the secondary looked without Manny Muhammad back there, and obviously we saw the offensive struggles for Texas against the Gators as well. So here's the latest. Here's what we think we know right now. Injury reports will start to come out tonight and tomorrow, then Friday. But here's what I've been hearing behind the scenes, starting with Manny Muhammad. He was, last week he was listed as questionable on Wednesday, then got downgraded to doubtful on Thursday, and then he was a game time decision on Saturday, trended in the wrong direction, obviously didn't play. The good news is Manny Muhammad practiced on Monday. He wasn't a full participant in practice, so I still think he's going to show up on the injury report. But the fact that he was out there practicing at the beginning of the week is a good sign. It's Texas OU. And it's not just Texas OU. You're a 2-loss Texas team going into OU. You cannot afford another loss. This is a must-win game, not just to get to keep the golden hat for the third time in 4 years. You got to win this game if you want to have a shot to get to Atlanta, to get to the playoff. Y'all are probably laughing at me saying that, but 3-loss team, odds are you're not getting in. The only 3-loss team that made it last year was Clemson. They got in because they won the ACC. At-large team, probably not happening. So you better start stacking some wins together. Over to the offense. Trey Wisner was also on the practice field Monday. Practiced a little bit yesterday too. And I think a very noteworthy nugget with Trey Wisner, he was available to the press on Monday's player availability. That's a good sign. If Trey Wisner wasn't going to play, like if Texas knew he wasn't going to play against OU, then he wouldn't be talking to the press. Like you don't put your injured guys out there. It's not just a Texas thing. That's an everybody thing. So good signs with Trey Wisner. Didn't look great. Didn't look good this past Saturday. Not all of that's his fault. A lot of it's on the offensive line, but again, all hands on deck, especially to try to get this running game going. Parker Livingston, this is amazing. He obviously took that brutal hit in the first half against Florida, tried to come back in, couldn't go, had an x-ray after the game, came back negative. Somehow, some way, despite how bad that hit looked, the injury isn't serious. Like, he should be good to go on Saturday. He's a Texas kid, grew up a Longhorn fan. He knows the importance of Texas OU. This is a game that he's wanted to play in for a long, long time. Didn't play last year in the Longhorns win over the Sooners. So he is going to try to give it a go. I'm sure it's a very colorful bruise on that knee. But again, x-ray came back negative, nothing structural, nothing too serious. It sounds like Parker Livingston is going to be cleared to play. And it sounds like he's going to do everything in his power to, again, be on the field Saturday afternoon. And then CJ Baxter, last but not least, did not practice on Monday, dealing with his own hamstring issue. He has been running. So a good sign, another guy who trended downwards as last week progressed leading up to Florida. We will see. I'm less confident about him as I am the other three, but he is running. If the hamstring was horrible, he would not be doing that. So starting to progress, but we'll see if he's back on the practice field later this week. Real quick for Oklahoma, John Mateer, the one guy who really matters, report yesterday from Pete Thamel. Said, quote, Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer is pushing to return this week for the game against Texas. There's a belief that his return is possible, and he's reacted well from the surgery, end quote. No clue what to make of that. Of course he's pushing to return. It's the biggest game of the year for both of these teams. It's a rivalry game. He's trying to ingratiate himself even more with the Oklahoma fan base. Like, legends are made in this football game. You don't think he wants to play here? But, okay, he wants to play. Is he going to be cleared to play? Saturday will be 17 days after his hand surgery. The initial reports were that he was going to be out 3 weeks or more. So 21 days or more, Saturday, 17 days. I don't know. We will see. Brent Venables has been pretty coy about things this week. Steve Sarkisian said Texas is preparing for both John Mateer and Michael Hawkins Jr. I think you have to do that. We'll find out as we get closer. I think it'll be a true game time decision to where, do we see John Mateer warming up before the game in uniform? Maybe he is, and maybe he sits on the bench. Maybe they just do that as a decoy, and then it's Michael Hawkins Jr. who starts. I have no idea. But that's the latest reporting from Pete Thamel of ESPN. Goes without saying, a massive storyline for both sides in this one. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Good news on the Texas injury front. Potentially good news for Oklahoma with their starting quarterback as well. But that'll do it for today. If you made it this far, God bless you. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, all of those great things. Really do appreciate y'all's continued support of Locked On Longhorns. We will have our crossover episode with the boys of Locked On Sooners. That'll be coming your way tomorrow. So a deep dive Texas OU preview with some good insight from the Sooner side of the Red River. That's coming up tomorrow. In the meantime, check out Locked On Bets. You want some bets for postseason baseball and NFL and college football? Only one place to go. That's Locked On Bets. They've got you covered every single day. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Appreciate y'all tuning in. That'll do it for today. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.